Wellness for Life is brought to you by Back in Motion Physical Therapy, Gothenburg Chiropractic Clinic, Mahabi Atwa Community Action Partnership, and Lakeside Sports and Pain Clinic.
Hello, I'm Matthew Koffenberg, physical therapist and owner of Back in Motion Physical Therapy, formerly Perham Physical Therapy. Today we're going to talk about a condition that affects 2% of the population. It affects women more than men at about a ratio of 3 to 1. And on average, it'll affect you when you are in your 50s. This particular condition we're talking about today is called frozen shoulder. Frozen shoulder is characterized by a gradual loss of motion at the shoulder joint with, unfortunately, a significant amount of pain. Now, the motion loss in a frozen shoulder is going to be all movements of the shoulder. So what we mean is you won't be able to reach behind your back, you won't be able to reach across your body, you won't be able to reach up. All of those movements will be lost, and that is the true characteristic of a frozen shoulder. Let's look at the clinical term of frozen shoulder. The clinical term for frozen shoulder is adhesive capsulitis. So what does that mean? Adhesive. Something is getting stuck together. Something is getting glued together. Capsulitis. Well, the end of that term, itis, always means inflammation. The first part of that word, capsule, means that the capsule is what is being affected. So the capsule of the shoulder joint is inflamed and it is getting adhered or stuck together. Thus, you start losing motion at the shoulder. Now, what's interesting about a frozen shoulder is that we really don't know what causes it. It often will come on spontaneously. There isn't really any injury that occurs. We do know that it is more commonly seen in people with diabetes or in people with Parkinson's. We're not completely certain what that connection is. So the other very interesting thing about a frozen shoulder is that if you do nothing about it, meaning you don't seek out any treatment, the frozen shoulder will actually get better. All frozen shoulders will go through 3 phases. The first phase is called the freezing stage. Now, this is the most painful stage. It's when the joint is acutely painful, it's when the joint is inflamed, and it's when the joint is starting to gradually lose its motion. The second phase of a frozen shoulder is called the frozen stage. That phase is still painful, it's not quite as painful. The inflammation is pretty much gone, and you do not lose any more motion, but you don't gain any motion during the frozen stage. The final stage of a frozen shoulder is called the thawing stage, and that's when motion is starting to be restored. And you have very little pain during the thawing stage. All frozen shoulders go through these 3 phases. Now, the time frame for how long these stages are does vary. So the freezing stage typically will last anywhere from as little as 6 weeks up to as long as 9 months. The frozen stage will last at a minimum of 4 months, all the way up to possibly 9 months. And the thawing stage will last for as little as 5 months, all the way to 3 years. So if you do the math and put all those numbers together, a frozen shoulder at its quickest will resolve in 10 months. At its longest, it will resolve in 3 years. That's where physical therapy comes into play. If you engage in some physical therapy, we can get you closer to getting out of a frozen shoulder in about that 10 to 12 month period. Now remember, I did say, however, if you do nothing about it, you'll go through all those 3 phases on your own and you'll get better, but typically that'll take 2 to 3 years. So what can we do in physical therapy? Well, in the first phase, the freezing stage, that's when the joint is painful and it's acutely inflamed. There isn't a ton of therapy that you're going to want to do, but what we can help with is reducing pain through modalities such as like ultrasound or electrical stimulation. Some people choose to get a cortisone injection just to kind of calm that inflammation down. In the frozen stage, that's when therapy really becomes quite beneficial. In the frozen stage, we will do what are called joint mobilizations, and that's what my little chart here is going to try to depict. If you remember, the shoulder joint is a ball and socket joint. So it's got a ball that sits inside of a socket. And around it is that capsule. Think of the capsule as like an accordion. The accordion covers the entire ball and socket. That accordion has folds on it. In a frozen shoulder, those folds get stuck together and they don't open. Well, what we do in therapy is we get in there and mobilize the joint. We basically break free those folds. So we want to stretch out the top part of the capsule by grabbing a hold of the bone and pulling down. We want to stretch out the front part of the capsule by, in essence, taking that bone and rotating it. And we also want to stretch out the bottom part of the capsule. In that case, what we do is we elevate the arm, we bring that arm up, and we push this bone straight down into the bottom, stretching that out. Those are called joint mobilizations. It really helps speed up the whole process of recovering from a frozen shoulder. Thank you very much for listening. My name is Matthew Koffenberg from Back in Motion Physical Therapy at 218-346-2464.
Thank you for watching Wellness for Life. Brought to you by Back in Motion Physical Therapy, Gothenburg Chiropractic Clinic, Mahabi Atwa Community Action Partnership, and Lakeside Sports and Pain Clinic.